Hello everyone, Patricia Warby, Alchemy Therapies here, and I just wanted to start a new discussion today on dementia because it's such a big topic that is affecting so many people, and it's going to only increase, unfortunately, due to the kinds of foods we're eating, the sort of lifestyles we're leading, and the toxicity generally in our environment, which is building up in our brains. Now, dementia has many different ways of presenting, and there are probably 3 or 4 different types of dementias. I'm not going to go into that kind of detail there because that's available in other places. What I want to do in this thread is to actually document how I'm working with my own mother, who is beginning to show signs herself, and what we've discovered works and what doesn't work. So my mum actually is 86. She hasn't been formally diagnosed yet. And we've actually stalled from doing that, taking her to the doctors to get the memory test done. Although obviously that's the recommended route. Knowing her as we do, any form of test is actually really difficult for her because it's a direct question, who is the Prime Minister? What's the name of your son or daughter, or where do you live? What's the date? These are the sorts of questions that they get asked. And direct questions are actually the ones that are most difficult for people suffering from dementia. Now, dementia is actually a group diagnosis of many different diseases because dementia can be caused by different things. So there is a form of dementia that comes about after a stroke. There is a vascular body, Lewy body dementia, which happens when the blood supply to the brain starts to deteriorate. And there is classic Alzheimer's as well, which is more like a very slow agglomeration of protein structures in the brain due to damage to the nerves, actually, that supply, and the glial cells which feed the nerves. And it has been likened to diabetes of the brain, actually. It is a result of over-processed sugary diets and a problem with detoxification. And that can come across through lack of sleep or good sleep, restorative sleep. It can be a genetic predisposition. As we know, some dementias, early onset in particular, has a genetic predisposition. That doesn't mean it's fixed. It doesn't mean if you've got the genetics, you're going to develop it. It means you have a tendency to, if you do not change your lifestyle. And that's really an important point. So my mother's dementia, I don't know which type it is. We do know that she's had memory problems for a while. She's been absolutely amazing at covering it up. And so for a while, we weren't sure. Now, I don't live near my mum, so a lot of what she tells me, I have to take as truth. But it appears over the summer, she's been saying some things that just didn't feel right to me, some very odd situations which she was saying were happening. Things like a neighbour had locked herself out. Well, that sounds very likely, but checking around, I couldn't find out which neighbour it was. She wasn't specific about which neighbour it was. And I began to notice there were patterns to some of these stories. Another one that's come up really frequently is a fear that she will not be helped, that somebody who's supposed to be coming can't come. In the most common instance, it's my brother because he's her main carer. He doesn't live with her, she lives independently, but he is involved in a lot of her care. So she will often say to me, he can't come because, and there'll be a particular reason. And for a while I thought, oh, that doesn't sound true. And I checked with my brother and it clearly wasn't the case. And then obviously over time we started to notice that this was something that her brain is telling her is happening, but actually isn't. And it's very frightening for both the sufferer and also for the people that love them, because you are aware that something is not right. And because of the stigma around mental ill health, we fear it very greatly. And we fear the fact that odd things are coming out of the mouths of those we love. And I've noticed with myself that this has made me really anxious, and therefore my anxiety has been communicated to my mum, when I'm saying, no, that's not true. which, by the way, you should never say to someone who's suffering from dementia. You have to do it in ways that are not directly confrontational. And saying something like, I wonder if that's not what happened last week or last month. Maybe it's okay now. I think it's probably okay now. You have to reassure the person that they're not inventing stuff, because their brains are already telling them difficult and conflicting information. And what it seems is that they're unable to make new memories. So this is the bit that goes wrong. So what you said to them 10 minutes ago, earlier that day, the instructions you gave them will disappear. But what happened a month ago or a year ago or 10 years ago may still be there if it was laid down properly. Now, as you know, memory is an important component of who we are. If I said to you, for instance, "Oh, would you like a cup of tea?" you would immediately work out, did I have one recently? Am I thirsty? Do I like this person's tea? Do they make it how I like it? Before you answered. And that involves memory, involves, in particular, recent short-term memory. Now, if that's disappeared, as it does with dementia, you won't know whether you're thirsty. You won't know whether you had one 10 minutes ago or an hour ago. And you won't know what it's going to be like from the person that's offering it. You may not even recognize them. So what is left, however, is the emotional content of what has been said. So how it is said is so much more important. So what I have found then is that this memory lack, these deficits of short-term, usually procedural memory, what to do when, is what disappears. But the person and the personality is still intact if you can access it. And this is the trick. Now, I'm obviously a newbie to this. My mum still lives independently. She is, to all intents and purposes, still an independent person, still functioning, able to wash and dress herself to the most part, but she has most recently been starting to forget to eat properly and to lose confidence with food preparation. So these are the things that are going, and we are learning how to deal with that. Now, one of the guideline books that I've been using is this one, Contented Dementia by Oliver James. And I'm going to be quoting some of the ideas in that throughout this series. So the main thing for you to know is that memory and emotion are linked. And what happens in dementia, very similar to trauma, which of course is my main role. I work with people who have PTSD and forms of trauma, is that the memory and the emotion become linked in traumatic memory. And that is what causes PTSD, actually, because these are unconscious memories. And so all you have left is the sensation of what happened, not the memory of what happened. And I had an absolute epiphany this morning when I woke up, and I thought, that's exactly the same as dementia from what I'm reading. So imagine being in trauma the whole time as an elderly person, because people don't seem to understand why you feel the way you do, and they contradict you and the truth that you're expressing. So this has been a very big revelation for me, and knowing what I know about memory and how important it is to transform traumatic memory into normal memories, into eventually into long-term memories, is how you actually take down the stress response in the body. And this is absolutely what happens in dementia. So a person loses their memory, but they still have the emotional component. Oliver James calls it a red flag. So every time they get a response that is discordant with their internal dialogue, which tells them what the story is about what's happening, usually related to past experience, not what's really going on, they will label it, or their brains will label it as a red flag, as something traumatic, because they can feel that the people around them are not in agreement with what's happening, and their own bodies and brains are telling them something's amiss, something's awry. So when my mum rings and says, I'm really confused, I know what she's saying now. She's saying something doesn't fit in my environment with what my brain tells me is happening. And what we have to do actually in dementia is we have to play the parts that work and reduce the anxiety and the discord that is actually driving these red flags or these traumatic laying down of memories. So I hope to show you practically how we're dealing with this in order for you perhaps to be able to help your loved ones, or even to prevent it happening, because that's another big part, is that the more of these red flags that occur, these discordant laying down of emotional feelings, this drives further anxiety, which drives inflammation. And as you know, inflammation is at the heart of dementia. So this isn't just about dealing with people who are already suffering. This is about knowing how, as people age, to actually give them the kind of well-being and lifestyle that helps them prevent this awful, awful disease. Because make no bones about it, this is not normal aging. This is as different from normal aging as, I guess, having diabetes is from normal, metabolic functioning. It is a disharmony in the body. It's a disruption of the normal way that the brain functions. And so it gets overwhelmed with toxicity it can't clear. And the protein tangles that we see in Alzheimer's are actually the body's defense system, as cholesterol is in blood vessels for heart disease. So that's another big topic, which I may cover. But for you to know at the moment is it's not set. It can change. You can intervene. And even if it's been diagnosed and somebody is showing symptoms, you can do something about it to ease their life and make them more content. And that is the whole point, is to stop this chain of events which terrifies the person and the carer into thinking this is irrevocable and so distressing for everybody. So I look forward to developing this with you, not just from theory, but in practice as we begin to work through some of these techniques with my own mum, and I hope it helps you. So do leave comments below, and if you're interested in this work, I would recommend the book that I've just mentioned, Contented Dementia, and there is also a website, and also you can find me on alchemytherapies.co.uk if any of this work is interesting to you and you want to follow up. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.